Thank you so much. Now, it is my privilege to invite our final speaker, Mr. Tahir Hussain Andrabi, the Additional Foreign Secretary at the Arms Control and Disarmament Division, to share his keynote remarks. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Am I audible and
Yes, sir,
visible?
you're audible. Yes, sir.
Thank you so
Absolutely.
much. Thank you for giving me the floor and inviting me to this event. Indeed, it is a pleasure, and pardon the glitches that prevented me from joining upfront. I was listening to most of these presentations, but somehow my audio and video could not be rallied because of our limited connectivity that we have here on 4G and other applications. So I had to switch venues. So please pardon that. I've listened to the presentations, very insightful, very detailed. I thought I'll be the most insightful. Mine would be the most insightful presentation, and I would share, lights on some of the issues. But I was pleasantly surprised to listen to the presentations and found that most of the things that I was to speak have already been elaborated. So I'll try to be brief, and maybe I don't know the format. If there is an interactive session planned, but I'll to basically summarize the discussion for you because all that I speak has already been highlighted in one way or another by the eminent presenters before me. Ladies and gentlemen, the CD, when we talk of the CD and we talk of addressing developments and looking at the future, we have to understand what the CD is all about, what this body is, what is its software, and those things have been mentioned before. Basically, CD is as highlighted, as a negotiating forum for on matters of arms control and disarmament. CD, ladies and gentlemen, I think we need to realize that CD evolved through one of the most hostile periods of the Cold War in the 60s and the 70s. So whilst these were the periods of heightened Cold War, heightened animosity, tensions between the Soviet and the US camps, the work on international diplomacy on arms control proceeded in one way or another. So, as I think highlighted by Shams Zaman Saab, he mentioned about the Committee of 10 and then the Committee of 18 and how it evolved into the CD. But basically, the big bang for the CD, the birth of CD, is through the SSOD 1 document, which basically calls for collective efforts for security and undiminished security for all. And these principles, which are in this UN General Assembly resolution adopted at the end of the special session of first special session of disarmament, is really the soul and the software of the CD. The second aspect of CD, which I think we should understand from its evolutionary point of view, is the fact that being born out of Cold War, CD, nobody wanted a majority minority rule in the CD's rules of procedures, because obviously then it would have meant in the 60s and 70s that the Washington and Moscow camps would be, lobbying for the votes, and this is an uncomfortable position. So they basically made a consensus rule. So now CD works on the basis of consensus. And consensus means that all of the 65 members of CD, they can block a decision. CD has to adopt a decision by consensus. The third evolutionary point of view is that the presidency of the CD is rotating, and whilst president has certain privileges, those privileges are somewhat circumscribed by the limited duration of his tenure or her tenure, or the fact that basically his role is primarily focused on drafting and presenting proposals and organizing the conferences and working out with the time schedule, and then towards the end of the session, negotiating to adopt the report of the CD. So these are the constraints with which the CD is working. And I think another aspect is that we need to understand the relationship of the CD with the wider United Nations. So whilst I'm sure the colleagues and scholars would be aware of the fact that CD is formally independent of the United Nations. It's not bounded by any UN General Assembly or Security Council resolutions in terms of fulfilling its mandate, and adopts its new agenda, taking into account the recommendation of other principal organs of the UN. So basically, this is an aspect that I would want the students who are here to sort of focus on. So with this broad brush, which was highlighted previously, but I've sort of given up in a rounded form. What Pakistan has done in the CD? Pakistan basically joined CD when it was a conference of committee on disarmament in 69 and 69 1969, and it had just in its preceding years negotiated a partial test ban treaty and an NPT in 1963 and 68 respectively. So we joined just after the conclusion of NPT deliberations. And basically, when we joined, I think the priority at that time was the BWC, Biological Weapons Convention, which was finalized in 1972. And then this committee of 10, committee on the conference metamorphosed into CD in 1979, as I mentioned, as a result of SSOD 1. So since then, Pakistan in 1979 tabled a draft international convention to assure non-nuclear weapon states against the use or threat of use of nuclear weapons. So this was the NSA, Pakistan's contribution, International Convention on NSA, a draft, tabled a draft resolution. And since then, we have had working papers submitted off and on, 1979 to 81, CD document 25, CD document 120 and 161, and another in 2023, uh, which was basically on lethal autonomous weapons. So I'm sure the students would look at these documents to see how and when Pakistan submitted proposals. Uh, um, uh, my colleague Dr. Zahir Kazmi mentioned about PAROS, NSAs, and I think those I don't need to highlight those points again. But basically, Pakistan is supportive of the two major items on CD's agenda, as I mentioned, the negative security assurance and the PAROS. We also are supportive of Russian and the Chinese proposal of PPWT, which is placement of weapons in outer space, or the threat or use of force against outer space objects, commonly known as PPWT. Pakistan is also supportive of other proposals that have been aired. For example, the prohibition on the use of radiological weapons that the US came up last year, and then uh, uh, new and destabilizing weapon systems in terms of military implications of AI. This is the idea that Pakistan supports for a discussion in CD, and basically call for structured discussion for carrying out its substantive work to better understand perspective of all states and make progress on all agenda items in a comprehensive and balanced manner. So what is this? What is the present state? The present state, as the speaker have highlighted, there is obviously a deadlock. CD has not negotiated a major instruments in last few decades, at least since CTBT 1996. And the reason we believe is the eroding global consensus underpinning disarmament and non-proliferation. The international security system landscape remains volatile. Cooperation is giving way to arms race. Global arms spending have increased, and basically the comprehensive the secure the quest for common efforts for security. Those common efforts are lacking, and CD cannot operate in an atmosphere where these systemic effects. CD cannot insulate itself from these systemic effects. So the deadlock in the CD is symptomatic of the tensions and the polarization on global security landscape, and it would be myopic to blame CD's working methods for this deadlock. No improvement of working methods could iron out these systemic constraints that I just mentioned. Um, so what is happening now in the CD is that basically CD is adopting its program, and that revolves around the work of the subsidiary bodies. Five subsidiary bodies are formed. This decision was taken in 2018 under the presidency of Sri Lanka at that time, and it was in effect a very useful decision because absence a major work in the negotiating in negotiating a major instrument, at least some normative work is done in these five subsidiary bodies. They basically hold six meetings. Uh, each each subsidiary body is headed by an ambassador. So basically, the agenda items that we mentioned, for example, the negative security assurance, the radiological weapons, the PAROS, and so on and so forth, even the military AI, though all of these are stacked under the different headings in which these subsidiary bodies are found are formed. For example, nuclear disarmament is done by SB1, subsidiary body 1, the negative security assurances, subsidiary body 4, PAROS in subsidiary body 3. Our own preference for a military AI is in subsidiary body 5, and radiological weapons are also in subsidiary body 5. FMCT in one form or another is discussed under subsidiary body 2. So these subsidiary bodies then present reports also on consensus. What I think the importance of this subsidiary bodies work is the important thematic discussions that they have held, bringing in scholars and bringing in academics and of course the government experts, and basically forwarding the discourse of nuclear disarmament and also underscoring the challenges therein. Going forward, uh, going forward, and this is the final part of my presentation. I think the going forward, the recourse is to what the principles on which the CD was formed, and this is in SSOD1. I, I hope all the colleagues here, indeed the students, should actually go through the document, the UN General Assembly resolution on adopted at the end of the session of disarmament 1978, basically collective efforts for security, undiminished security for all, and unless and until those principles are upheld, and the CD cannot work forward. Equity, non-discrimination, restraint, and recognition of legitimate interest of all states are elements for CD and other constituents of the disarmament machinery, which must be upheld. Uh, there are certain areas where CD can work, negative security assurances being one of them. There is emerging consensus on that. In addition, Pakistan feels that at least there are four other areas on which CD can make progress, and these include one is the weaponization of artificial intelligence. There are various processes like the responsible AI in military domain process. So the security aspects of artificial intelligence can be discussed in the CD. Then there are another issue on which CD can deliberate is the hypersonic weapons, direct energy weapons, and missile defense systems, and how to regulate them because they represent largely an ungoverned space in our arms control machinery. Cyber technologies, yes, the security implications, and indeed the integration and deployment of new technologies in outer space. So these are the four areas on which a CD ought to work. and should start its work sooner than later. So, uh, if history is any marker, conflicts cannot be wished away. They will stay one way or another. But like the international community transcended those conflicts of the 60s and 70s to lay the foundation of CD and its preceding bodies to do some very important work in arms control, international law of arms control, bringing up all these weapons, all these conventions, the BWC, the CCW, the CWC, and CTBT, PTB, NPT, and so these kind of instruments are possible now if CD resorts to its founding principles. And this is where I will stop. Thank you.